In this video, we're going to talk through the application assignment, Classroom Talk Analysis. This is one of my favorite application assignments that you get to do in this course, as it gives you a chance to think deeply about the way that you structure talk in your own classroom, or if you're not a practicing teacher currently in someone else's classroom, but it really provides you with a platform for thinking critically and doing some close analysis around how we create spaces for talk in the classroom, and in particular for multilingual learners to engage in meaningful talk. So I just want to walk you through what this assignment looks like and talk through the rubric, and so you have a clear idea of what the expectations are for how you'll be evaluated. So you can see here a description of the assignment that explains that you're going to be applying what you've learned this week about oral language development by critically analyzing talk in your classroom or in another teacher's classroom. So to do this, you're going to be recording a lesson that includes a component where you are facilitating a discussion with either the whole class or with a small group of students that includes multilingual learners. And you're going to be recording it so that you can transcribe it. So you don't have to submit a video or an audio recording for this application assignment, but you will need a recording so that you can go back and carefully transcribe what was said and by whom. So you'll pick about a 2 to 3 minute segment for this analysis. You'll transcribe that segment, and then you'll analyze it within these 3 areas and with some of these guiding questions. So first, you'll be just describing the talk. So you'll be answering questions around kind of who is participating and in what ways, who isn't participating. So do you hear from all students in this interaction that you are highlighting, that you transcribed or not? Who does the majority of talking? We've talked in week 5, focused on oracy. We talk about how, in many classrooms, teachers do still do most of the talking. Is that what happened in this interaction? And if so, what were some of the kind of question and answer patterns that may have contributed to that? Which gets into the second bullet. What types of questions did you ask? Was it more IRE focused? So teacher initiates, student responds, teacher evaluates, which is more of a teacher directed form of classroom talk? Or is it more dialogic, open-ended, where there's spaces for students to engage in extended, meaningful sense making? So looking closely at the types of questions that were asked will help you answer that question. And then looking at questions, thinking about which types of questions seem to lead to the richest student engagement. What was the topic of those questions? How were they framed? And why do you think that was the case then, that those were the ones that students engaged with the most? So that's the first part, is just describing the talk that's happening. The second moves into looking specifically at the opportunities for oral language development of the multilingual learners in the room. So how were those students participating? What opportunities did they have for oral language development? What sorts of supports or scaffolds were in place to support their participation? So did their sentence frames provided, for example? Did they engage in a turn and talk with a partner before being asked to share out in the whole group? So thinking about, based on the learning we do during the oracy week around scaffolds, which scaffolds were put in place or not to support their participation. And this is the section where I really want to see strong connections between SLA theory, second language acquisition theory, and around oral language development and what you saw. So you're a chance to kind of apply what you're seeing in real time in your own classroom or in the classroom where you're doing the observation. So you might draw from concepts like message abundancy, comprehensible output, comprehensible input might play a role in students' own sense making and ability to respond then. So thinking about how you can connect some of those theories to what you saw. And then finally, is there anything you would do differently? So here's where you think about what you learned, what you observed, the analysis you've done up to this point, and then any changes you might make in terms of scaffolds that you might include, in terms of the way you might ask questions. So you're kind of thinking big picture around what the impact of this discussion might have been on the learning and language development of your multilingual learners, and giving some evidence for that, and then what you might change. So that kind of gives you a little bit more detail about what I'm looking for in your analysis. The written reflection should only be about 2 to 3 pages, double spaced. So you're kind of engaging in all of that analysis in a shorter reflection, although if you need an extra page, that's totally fine. And again, remember that you should be citing theories and concepts from readings, explaining what they are, and then explaining how they apply in the specific context with the evidence that you're finding in this transcript. So here's where I mentioned that you don't have to upload the video. I did include on the second page a sample transcript just so you can see what I'm envisioning. So it doesn't have to look exactly like this, but you can see here I provided some context for the lesson. So the grade, the focus, the way that the students were grouped, and some context about what the lesson is. And then this is what I'm looking for in terms of transcription. So the name of the person who said it, what they said, and then the next turn, so the next person who spoke. You can use pseudonyms if you'd like, so you don't have to use students' real names if you'd like. You can say student 1, student 2, but it is nice to have a name, so it's easier to kind of remember who's talking when it's someone's name. This is an example that I just pulled from Fisher, Frey, and Rothenberg's book. This isn't likely a 3-minute example, but this is the excerpt that they presented just to show you kind of how you can transcribe what's happening. And then here you see on page 3, the rubric. So there's 4 categories that I'm going to be evaluating your papers in. The first will be the transcription itself. So you should include the transcription in your paper. Probably an appendix is a good place to put it. So appendix, and then just have the transcript there, so that you did that well, you did it in detail. Then I look at your analysis for those in those 3 different areas that we talked about. I have a specific section looking at engagement with course theories and concepts. So are you citing, explaining, and applying at least 3 concepts or theories to analyze classroom talk patterns? And do you demonstrate that you understand what those ideas are? And then finally, writing quality. So just looking at, is the writing clear, easily understood, and are using APA format correctly? Remember to also have a references page with your paper where you list out the full references that you cited. And then in your paper itself, you just use the in-text citations when you are mentioning the theories or providing a specific quote as well. All right, so that is the classroom talk analysis assignment. I'm really looking forward to reading your papers. As I mentioned, this is one of my favorite assignments, and I hope it's a really fruitful way for you to think more critically about the role that classroom talk plays in your own classroom, if you are currently teaching, and in general, as we think about ways to better support multilingual learners in ORC development.